We're now going to move on to the first keynote of the day. Our speaker is Beth Macdonald. Beth is the director of Future Considerations, which is based in Manila in the Philippines. She's worked with Fortune 500 companies and small enterprises in a career that spanned over 30 years. She's coached executives in Japan, China, and the Philippines in the process of developing their leadership skills. She's supported Asian organizations in moving from national to regional organizations, and also from becoming regional to global players. She's also assisted multinationals in entering into the Asian markets themselves. I hope you'll all join me in giving Beth a big round of applause as we welcome her on stage.
And you're all going to be part of that performance art. So a little bit earlier, some very industrious young men came around and they were handing out paper. And I just want to check that everybody in the room has at least 2 pieces of paper. Does everybody have 2 pieces of paper? If you don't, could you put your hand up so somebody could bring you some paper? Thank you very much. So it could either be they were bringing around this kind of paper, and they were bringing around this kind of paper. So it doesn't matter what kind of paper you have, as long as you have some paper. So I think they're organizing that now. So as you can tell from my gray hair, I have had a lot of years on the planet. So this notebook is going to help me to remember the things that I wanted to say to you today. Are you guys okay with me using this? Yes? Great. Okay. So first of all, I want to very briefly tell you about Future Considerations. Although I am based in Manila, Future Considerations is a London-based consultancy, and its work is focused on distributing power in corporations in order to create productivity and cooperation. So that's what the focus of Future Considerations is. I've had the privilege of attending quite a few of the sessions today. And one of the ones that struck me was one that was put on by the folks from the advertising industry. And they were addressing the question of why is it difficult to show empowered women in advertising? So it's a very interesting question. And during that conversation, there was quite a bit of conversation that talked about the concept of gender neutrality. You heard that term before, gender neutrality? Anybody? Yes? Okay. I need feedback, otherwise I don't know what to do. Yeah? Okay, well, I want to tell you I may be a little controversial here today, because I'm not actually a proponent of gender neutrality. As a matter of fact, what I am a proponent of is gender celebration. So the idea that Prima said we need a festival to celebrate female leadership or to celebrate women is a fantastic idea. But I think in general, my position in the world is that we need to celebrate gender, period. That both men and women bring something very distinct and unique to leadership. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. So I'm going to be talking about what I call embracing leadership. So the word embrace has a couple of meanings. So we all know the meaning of embrace, which is when we see someone that we really care about, we put our arms out and we hold that person. We embrace them. We bring them to us. And when we do that, I don't know about you, but when I get embraced, I definitely have a feeling of inclusion and safety. So that's one of the aspects of embracing leadership that I'd like to talk about. But the other meaning of embracing is that I have enthusiastic acceptance of something. So I'm also going to be inviting you to consider, are you enthusiastically embracing leadership? Are you looking at yourself as a leader and very enthusiastically taking a hold of it and moving forward with that? I got too many things here. I was hoping for a stool, but we couldn't find one. So these are the points that I'm going to be talking about. in the next about 27 minutes. Embracing leadership is about how we actually create an embracing space as a leader. And we'll talk about how that happens by first noticing where you are. Second, being present where you are. And finally, acting compassionately. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what do all of those things mean to me. So the very first thing that sometimes is a challenge for women, in my experience, I don't know about in Bangladesh, so you'll be the ones to tell me this, is that sometimes when we step into a space of leadership, we hesitate. We hold ourselves back from embracing that leadership because we're not sure how good of a job we're going to do. We keep thinking about, can I be the kind of mother I want to be? Can I be the kind of professional I want to be? Can I be the kind of community leader that I want to be? Am I good enough? My experience is that globally, women are often, that's interesting, are often sabotaged by their need for perfection. So one of the first things that we want to think about when we're embracing is, are we embracing who we are as we are, including all of our fallibilities and all of the mistakes that we make as we take our journey and we go? Can we actually allow ourselves to be imperfect? Can we allow ourselves to not be the very best of mothers sometime, or to not be the very best of professionals sometimes? Are we able to do that? Are we actually able to embrace that as a space for ourselves? This is what struck me just a minute ago when the ambassador from Denmark was talking about the concept of threat. That's a really interesting idea, and I feel it's a very salient idea, that there are many people in the workplace, many men who feel threatened when women enter the workplace. But there are also many women who feel threatened because they're feeling excluded from the workplace. So this is the other aspect of embracing leadership that I feel is really essential for us to move forward. And that is for us to create an environment in which we can reduce that threat and make people feel safe. So I said the first thing I was going to talk about is that we need to notice where we are. So one of the first approaches that we can use in terms of noticing where we are is to ask ourselves a question about, what do we think and feel? So as we were listening to the honorable ambassadors who were up on the stage a couple of minutes ago, they were sharing with us what they think and feel. They were sharing their mental models with us, and they were sharing their emotional reactions. So it's a very essential place for us to start with in terms of leaders. As you were listening to them, you may have had some responses to what they said. I know I did, okay? When I was listening to them talk about, oh, we have to limit the number of children we have, I was thinking, that's not a universally held way of thinking in the world that I live in. Some people think lots of children is something that I want to have in my life for whatever reason. So what we want to do when we're thinking about ourselves as a leader and embracing how we're going to lead is to start with thinking about, what do I think and feel? Have I really reflected on that? Am I embracing the validity of my own thinking and emotion? The second thing is to think about my competencies and skills. What am I actually qualified to do? So we just listened to some conversation about, are we making sure that people have higher education? Are we making sure that women have access to the kinds of competency and skill development that they need? So we need to take an inventory for ourselves and think about, what is it that we need to change? Or, I was listening this morning to one of the ladies on the panel say, let's think about what our strengths are and operate from our strengths. How are we going to take advantage of those? The third question that's very important for us is, how do I relate to the thoughts and feelings and ways of being of my particular culture? So as a leader, am I actually thinking about the culture that I am leading in? And am I thinking about what am I accepting and what am I not accepting? So again, this morning when I was listening to the panel of advertising folks, they were caught in a dilemma. They were thinking back and forth between, in order to have successful advertisements, what we need to do is we need to have stories that people can relate to, that reflect the current everyday life in Bangladesh. But on the other hand, what they were talking about is, maybe we have a moral obligation to actually put out advertising that helps those attitudes and mindsets to shift. So we need to think about, where are we with respect to our cultures? Are we wanting to reinforce them, to perpetuate them? Are we wanting to move away from some of the traditional practices? Where are we? The last question is, how do you relate to the structures and processes of your system? I'm an American, you can tell from my accent, I suppose. And I have to tell you that every day I have a hard time looking at the New York Times. It's very difficult for me to look at what's going on in the United States. So this morning I was looking at the news talking about how, I think it's the state of Kentucky, wants to maintain the ability of 13-year-old girls to get married. And I was thinking to myself, wow, that's a process, that's a structure of the United States that I can't support. That's something that's just out for me. So this is a really important consideration for me in thinking about, who am I as a leader? How do I relate to those systems and processes? Which ones am I happy to accept? Which ones is it critical for me to challenge? There's another part of knowing where you are. And that is kind of noticing where you are in the leadership journey. Because there's lots of different lenses that we can lead from. This is one model, there's lots of models. All of these models talk about an idea called vertical development. So what does it mean? It means that usually when we start out on our leadership journey, we're leading from a space of expertise. When we graduate in chemical engineering, we really want to show people what an incredible chemical engineer we are. And we want people to pay attention to our ideas because we know so much. So we're leading from the space of expertise. So you may want to think about yourself and think about, is that where I lead from? Does my leadership come from my knowledge, from my expertise? Or have I encompassed something else? Am I at this next level in the story? Am I an achiever? Have I focused myself on a goal, a tangible goal? And am I organizing people to deliver against that goal? Because that's a completely different leadership lens. Would you agree? Yeah? Okay. Then I could be a catalyst. So a catalyst is somebody who leads from an innovative vision. So when I see Shariful or I look at Prima, I see somebody who leads from an innovative vision. Do you agree? Yeah, totally. So that's a completely different way of leading. My actions will be completely different when I come from that particular lens. Or I could be a co-creator. I could be interested in thinking about, could I take everybody's individual goals and could I create a shared purpose that we could move toward, which is a completely different kind of leadership. And finally, and I've met some people like this in Bangladesh who are just totally amazing, is this person called a synergist. Somebody who doesn't just lead inside of an organization or inside of a community or inside of a country, but leads at a much larger scope and is bringing people toward a much deeper purpose. And I'm sure you can all name some of those people here in Bangladesh. Yes? Thank you. So you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this subject, So I have a timekeeper helping me so I don't keep going. The final part of knowing where you are is to know what your purpose is. So today, when I was listening to the presentations, I was hearing lots of people talking about the importance of being stubborn. Did anybody hear that? Were you in that presentation? So there was a lot of conversation about how women succeed through their stubbornness. Does that resonate with any of you? Yeah, you're pointing at somebody who's stubborn, huh? Okay, thank you. So I would like to translate that for you a little bit from my perspective. I think stubbornness is someone who has a very clear expression of their purpose and therefore is in pursuit of that purpose, and nothing can knock them off of that pursuit. So this is, I think, one of the most essential things for us as women stepping into and embracing leadership to be clear about. What is our purpose? And if you look at this tool, which was developed by a woman, by the way, you'll see that it takes us in a very integral way at looking not only about ourselves, but also at the communities that we impact. Whoops. Okay. Now it's time for performance art. Are you guys ready? Are you ready? Thank you. Okay. Liberation. Yes? Okay, I'm going to ask you all to stand up. Okay, I'm going to share a secret with you, and this secret is about the fastest hack to change how you are with respect to being a leader. The fastest hack is not through your mind, it's not through your spirit, it's through your body. So what I want you to do now is I want you to notice how you're standing. I want you to notice the distribution of weight from one foot to another. So move back and forth from one foot to another. Can you do that? Okay, do you notice if your knees are stiff and you're up like this? Okay, if they are, I'd like you to relax your knees a little. Bend it and notice what happens. Now what I want you to do is really feel your feet on the floor. Can you do that? If you want to take off your shoes, it's okay. Okay, feel your feet on the floor. Okay, and now I want you to imagine that you're back in dance school and that there's an imaginary string on the top of your head, making sure that your head is nice and up tall. Yes? Can you do that? Do that imaginary string. Notice how your body is. Now, notice, are you kind of leaning forward a little bit, or do you tend to move back a little bit? Move forward and backwards and notice how you are. Yeah? Find that place where you feel really grounded and you feel like you're very balanced in your body, from top to bottom, from left to right, from forward to back. Can you find that place? Yes? That's what we call grounded. Yeah? And when we're grounded, what difference does that make in terms of our leadership? Does it make any difference if we're grounded? What if I'm like this? What do you think? Is that the body of a leader? No. Okay. Later today, when you go home and you look on Facebook or Instagram and you look at the photographs from this session, I want you to notice how men and women hold their bodies differently. Yeah? I want you to notice when they're sitting in the chair, this is what I noticed. You can sit down, by the way. You can keep standing if you want. Here's what I noticed this morning. I noticed very ladylike women. Did you notice that? They had their knees together and their ankles together, and they were like this, and they were very straight up like this. Did the men look like that? No. What were the men doing? They were taking up a bit more space, weren't they? Yes? Okay. I want you to think about how your body reflects leadership. It's very important. And the next time there's one of these conferences, I'm going to convince Sharifa and Prima to let me bring some embodied leadership people here so we can really work on what it is to have the body of a leader. Now I want you to take your piece of paper. Are you ready? Okay, has everybody got a pen? Okay, perfect. So men, you can do this too. We'll see if it looks any different. But ladies, this is what I want you to think about. I want you to think about a very important management concept. It's called VUCA. Have you heard of that before? Have you heard of that? Volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. That's a word that we're using to describe how the world is today. Do you relate to that? Is it volatile? Are things around you uncertain? Is there some chaos in the world? Is stuff kind of ambiguous? Yes? Okay, great. Now what I want you to do on the piece of paper is I want you to make a little drawing that represents the systems that you work in. Your work system, your family system, your community system, maybe your religious community, whatever it is, and I want you to notice how many communities you're a part of. Could you draw that now on the piece of paper for me? Just quickly. So think about all the different systems you support. You support a system in the office or in your workplace. You support your family. You may support your community. There may be a religious organization that you're part of that you support. There might be some sports clubs, or there might be some other kinds of organizations that you're a part of and that you support. So just quickly, make a little sketch so that you know how many of those systems there are in your life. You got something down? Yeah? You got an idea? So I notice it's taking some of you a long time, which means that you're living in environments that are really complex. Yes? Okay, and now here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at that drawing that you made, however you represented them, whether it were circles or words or whatever they were. And I want you to ask yourself, how many of those can you predict? How many of those do you actually experience things that surprise you? How many of those contain things that are ambiguous? How many of those change quickly? Maybe you have a son who was in love with a beautiful woman A this week, and next week gets beautiful woman B. Yes? Maybe you have a daughter who was on the top of the world last week, and this week she's in tears. Maybe last week you thought you were going to get promoted, and this week somebody else got your job. So what do you notice about those systems? How predictable are they? Are they predictable? No. So why am I telling you this story? Because I think, and sorry guys, this is an assertion on my part, I think that women actually deal with a lot more complexity, with a lot more ambiguity and uncertainty than men. And the good news, ladies, is that means we've had really good training to deal with complexity in the workplace and in the world today. Yes? So I want you to congratulate yourself for being here today and having been able to navigate that. Now, I asked you to have two pieces of paper. Do you have a telephone? Does everybody in here have a phone? Can you get your phone out, please? Everybody got their phone? Okay, beautiful. Now we're going to do the next piece of performance art. I want you to take the second piece of paper, and I want you to use that piece of paper to take a photograph of the person next to you. But I want you to use the paper to change the perspective of the image. However you want to do that. That's all the instructions you get. Take a photograph of the people next to you and use your piece of paper to change how that person looks. However you want to use your paper. You ready? You got 1 minute to do it because we're getting close to the end of our session. Let's see you're making photographs now. Use your piece of paper. Let's see how creative you can get. I want to see those pieces of paper up there. Use the piece of paper to alter the photograph. Ooh, I like that one in the back. Nice. Come on, play with me. Take a photograph. Use the piece of paper. There you go. There's another guy willing to try. Okay. Did you notice that it took us a while to get going? Did you notice that when I first asked you to do it, you didn't really want to? Did you notice that? Okay. Where do you think some of that might have come from? Fear of getting it wrong. Absolutely. Fear of getting it wrong. That's often what does. And what else? Maybe fear of being assessed as not being as creative as the guy next to me. Fear that I make bad photographs. Fear that I'll look silly. Yes? So that brings us to our third and last point, which is in order to create embracing leadership, what we need to do is to act compassionately. And the first act of compassion is to ourselves. We need to give ourselves a break. We need to be friendly to ourselves. And what we need to do is to think about life as a series of experiments. So what you just did has the potential to be the beginning of a series of experiments. So in creating Embracing Leadership, I invite you to create a space of safety and inclusion for yourself to begin with, taking care of yourself and being compassionate with yourself, and then also for others. Stay curious about what's possible, and the last thing is, please embrace your varied intelligences. So what I notice is very often for women, we are pushed into thinking rationally. How logical can we be? How rational can we be? But we actually have an aptitude for being intuitive. We have an aptitude for synergy. We have an aptitude for bringing things together and looking at them as a system. So I invite you not to move into the male form of leadership, which we really need, but to embrace both the masculine and feminine side, and to allow men also to embrace their masculine and feminine sides, and let our intuition join our rationality as we lead. So in summary, a very short journey. I wish I had about 3 days to take you through this. Embracing leadership is a way for us to be inclusive and to embrace others. It's for us to embrace ourselves as leaders. And we create an embracing space in order for that kind of inclusion to take place. We have to notice where we are in order to lead. If we're not paying attention, if we're not mindful, we really can't lead. And we need to be present where we are. We need to notice what's going on with our bodies. We are a whole creature. We're not just a head. And finally, we need to act compassionately in order to create that space of inclusion for ourselves and others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Beth. I'm going to ask you to please stay on stage. We're going to invite Mr. Nizam Chaudhry, who is an independent specialist for the elderly and a public speaker, to come on stage and give Beth a token of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's so wonderful. There's a guy cleaning up after me.